Hey everyone, it's been a while. I planned to make videos every month or two when I first began my YouTube journey, but alas, it was not to be because I got robbed. Everything was fine and dandy, and then one day I came home to find my house had been looted, and it was pretty demotivating. I've never had my house broken into before, so I didn't really know how to react. I was there just like,
Huh?
and holding my cat, telling her it was going to be okay. It was rough. And my husband was a mess because of it, so supporting him was my top priority at the time. Everything else just kind of faded into the background. Flash forward like 9 months and bam! I'm so back. That makes it sound like I was pregnant with this video. Anyways, I just wanted to give some sort of explanation and context to my disappearance before I continue. With that being said, let's begin. When I got robbed, my computer was stolen and all my local files went with it. RIP, old computer. All my stream assets were lost, along with my whips for videos. So here we are starting fresh. I'm making new stream and video assets, yay! Which means a ton of drawing and coming up with new ideas. I'm terrible at staying motivated, but I'm using my current momentum to my advantage. Hence, the idea that came to my mind as I was making one of my stream assets. Actually, it was kind of my husband's idea. As I was streaming one night, I asked him what I should make for my starting asset for my streams, and he said, "Anime girl running with toast in her mouth." And I was so inspired by that single sentence that I animated a whole 12-frame cycle out of it. And it's my first crack at something like this. I've animated a handful of stuff in my life, being an animation school graduate and all.
Look what you've done to my peonies!
But I rarely animate for fun anymore. I think school just sucked the fun out of it. Still, I managed to have a whole lot of fun with this, and I was hyper-focused for like 6 hours on it. So you should look at it, but not yet. No spoilers, jeez. Well, getting to the point, this video is about that animation and how not to animate like me. I'm going to talk about what animation is, why I have the relationship I have with it, various software I've used and animating in Clip Studio Paint, as well as looking at my process and how we can make improvements on it. In other words, how not to animate like me. For context, I know how to animate because of the 4 long and grueling years at art school, but I also knew the basics before all that. I honed my craft in school and created some things, not good things, but things. I'm not like the worst animator in the world by far, but I'm also not the best at all. Also, for someone who graduated with a degree in it, I actually kind of hate animating. Who would have thought, that doing something for a grade takes all the love and appreciation for something you had and just flushes that right down the toilet? Yeah, maybe don't go to art school if that's what happens to you too. The positive side of things is that part of me seems to be healing after almost 6 years of being out of university, and I really appreciate that I'm able to make things like this without wanting to rip my eyeballs from their sockets and bury myself in the sand. Wow, that imagery. I've used a variety of animation softwares in my time, even some that you really aren't meant to animate in. MS Paint, but none of them really bug me the way that Clip Studio does. After you get the hang of it, animating in CSP is mostly a breeze, but warming up to it is really bad. It's a nightmare for me personally because I'm used to very streamlined user interfaces for animating by hand. I miss Toon Boom products so much, guys. But as a poor, I can't afford that stuff. I even dabbled in some 3D animation in school because I was forced to, but that stuff was buns. Or at least I was buns at that stuff. Now that I'm more mature, I realize I should have paid more attention in those classes. I will learn Blender someday, but that day is not today. There are a couple of features I like about Clip Studio Paint that are different from your traditional animation software. For example, using clipping masks and layer modes is not a hassle for frame by frame. Learning the interface is relatively easy for someone like me who is very familiar with digital art softwares and animation softwares of all kinds. Maybe for a beginner who is just starting out with digital art, it would be more confusing. However, I like that it's a comfortable and familiar place with nice brushes and has all those necessary frame by frame features like onion skin. But that is where the like ends and the hatred begins. Why is it not an automatic feature that a new layer folder is created within the animation folder as soon as you open up an animation file if it's so necessary to the process? Why? Why is copy and pasting a runaround? Why is tweening like that? All necessary questions. But I digress. It's not that bad. For simple frame by frame, I suppose you're in the right place. Moho. Oh my god. I'm avoiding learning the wonderful Moho interface because I'm scared it will be too much, but it's so nice and I got it for like $25, but I'm scared. While I'm holding on to straightforward frame by frame 2D animation for dear life, I figured I would tell you my terribly insufficient process for actually making an animation. I begin with a keyframe thumbnail or sketch. This is usually a rough sketch, though I'm a pretty clean sketcher, so mine are more tied down than some artists. But there is nothing wrong with a literal stick figure or some random lines that only make sense to you, whatever makes you the most comfortable. With this key, I like to have a very precise idea of the movement that I want in my animation if it's a full body animation. So that's what I did here. To be completely honest, I wasn't even planning to animate in the first place, but it sounded so enticing. So I adjusted and made a new animation file out of the sketch that I made as my primary key and started animating from there. And when I say animating, I mean like straight ahead. Like none of that pose to pose keyframe stuff. That's for babies. Wusses. Stupid people, obviously. Who wants to stay on model for an entire animation and have accurate shapes and volume language? Not me. So like the giant idiot I am, I animated 11 whole body frames one after the other, and I quickly noticed some problems. Like, what are those arms? What was I even trying to accomplish? I don't know. I was focused on the legs for the most part in the beginning, so I ignored the arms. And when I finally figured out the legs by staring at the run cycle picture inside Richard Williams' giant-ass book for nerds, I actually went back and made the arms, make sense. After that, my rough animation was finished, and it was bad. It was bad. That's all there is to it. Rough animation always looks good until you stare at it enough and realize that it's bad. Bad. I mean, not that bad, but still not great. Now, generally, I try to focus on secondary movement at least a little in the beginning. The toes flopping up and down with the run, the hair movement, the tail, all of these are secondary to the primary movement of the body. Creating the follow-through for these movements is important and not completely irrelevant in the roughs, so I include it here. I pretty much ignore any arc movement by doing my animation straight ahead, so I focus more on the head movement arcs and the legs on cleanup. Those wiggly guys are really important, you know. After staring at the animation I made in like 3 hours, I took a much needed break, put the roughs on the internet, and made mental notes of all the things I needed to fix. Volume accuracy and appeal were my top priorities in cleanup. I focused on the head movement first, then after making sure that the bouncing ball was bouncing right, aka the head, I started on the body and finished with the tail, which honestly was the easiest part of the whole thing. Then I colored it with a bucket tool and voila, I was finally done. That only took almost 6 hours. Dies. Now, try to flush that whole image of me away and think of a new world, a better world if you may, a utopia, one in which I don't do any of that shit. First, keyframes are a thing for a reason. I may not understand timing charts completely, but keyframes? Why don't I use them? Like, seriously, why? Anyways, less self-oration and more fixie-fixie. Often, you will see experienced animators chop their work up into bite-sized pieces, especially if they are animating something that requires different moving parts. Individual keys spaced apart by anywhere from 2 to 10 frames are pretty standard, even more if you're sure of yourself or find it necessary. It's a good way to keep yourself in check by staying on model and keeping volume consistency. If I ever do a walk or run cycle again, I will definitely be using keys to my advantage. Now, animating straight ahead is not bad. It's often used by animators, though I have found a mixture of the two techniques is common. Copy and pasting. I don't know her, but I'd like to. Using technology to my advantage because I'm not just animating on paper, am I? So doing a rough thumbnail before the rough sketch of keys with copy and pasted sticks and circles would probably help me a lot with those arcs of movement that people have while they run. I will say that animating a lot in school did give me a good sense of intuition when it comes to movement and overlap. A good tip when animating is not to space things out evenly because it can cause movement to look too robotic and unnatural. Using a series of drawings that are spaced closer to each other or farther away is known as spacing, and you'll often see it portrayed as this kind of pendulum movement, slowing the further toward the edge you get and moving faster in the center. This is a really good example here. Another thing I would do differently is not sketching too solidly when creating my first rough. I did really detailed sketching, which while making cleanup easier, sacrificed some of the initial gesture-based movement I would have been able to achieve had I done something less detailed. The initial idea isn't on model drawing. It's focusing on the movement and all the other principles of animation before you get to sell the drawing and appeal. In less specific terms, I need to try less and give myself more freedom to let things look bad before I make them look good. While looking at more examples of run cycles that accomplish what they're trying to do, I have found that many are better than mine and are doing so by using all of those lovely principles that I've been talking about. I think more thought process goes into these really lovely and clean run cycles, but it may also just be practice. I didn't expect to get things right on my first try, but at least I did make an effort. I tried, and that's something to be proud of, especially after not animating for so long. Practice makes perfect. It's not really about what software you're using. I mean, a lot of people just use paper. I'm spoiled with all my lovely tech, and I need to use it to my fullest advantage. Now, drum roll please. And voila! The clean and colored run cycle for you to enjoy. Just look at it. Look and be amazed. My persona looks so cute in the little school uniform. Oh, while I may need a lot more practice before I get really good at this, I think I did a pretty bang-up job in the end after fixing some stuff in cleanup. Is it perfect? No, but I love it all the same. Well, with that, I don't really have anything more to say other than if you want to follow along on my art journey, maybe stay tuned for what's to come. And if you've made it this far, let me know if you've tried animating a run cycle before and any tips you may have for me. Lots of love to y'all. Bye!